Good morning. Welcome to the third part of our motivation discussion. Today, we're going to talk about the cognitive theories of motivation. And there's two basic theories, the equity and the expectancy theory. And basically, people aren't driven by inner needs, but instead, people are rational decision makers and make decisions that they believe will lead to the best outcomes. Okay? So, decision making theories, basically. Equity theory. Employees' perceptions about the fairness. Fair. What's fair? Employees, or heck, this comes out of social psychology, so this is not an IO psychology theory. And so what happens is people will view their inputs and outputs. They'll look at what have I put into this thing, what have I gotten out of this thing. And so it's basically just a scale, a balance scale. And so what's going to happen is we attempt to balance inputs and outputs to achieve what's called equity. Okay? So different inputs and outputs are the two sides of the scale that we're trying to balance. Inputs such as education and effort and ability and skills and knowledge, experience, vision, diversity that I add to the company, etc. The different outcomes would be how much do I get paid? What are my benefits, right? Do I get recognition? All of these different outcomes. Am I getting valuable experience from this that will help me later? These kinds of things. Do I have satisfaction? Do I get lots of opportunities here? And so the basic premises or postulates, rather, of equity theory is that people strive to maintain this equity or balance, right? And so when inequity is perceived, when you feel as though there's an imbalance between the inputs and the output, we'll feel tension, okay? A tension state. And as in other theories of motivation, like hunger theory, when we're hunger theory, listen to me. But if we're out of balance, that is, hunger is an indication that we are out of balance. And we are out of balance, we are motivated. So hunger motivates us to perform behaviors to bring us back in balance, right? It's the same idea. If we feel we're out of balance, we'll be motivated to do things to reduce this tension and put us back in this balance. And equity sensitivity is, again, an individual difference variable, almost, again, a personality, related to a personality variable. It's the extent to which people are, the tolerance that they have for being out of balance, okay? Some people are basically, they want balance, and some people, and I'm still okay, and some people have a large discrepancy and they'll still tolerate it. But some, it's like if I'm even slightly out of balance, in particular, if I feel like I'm underpaid by even $1, I'm checking out, okay? And so what we find is that if people feel that there's inequity and it's out of balance, these are the different things that they can do to get themselves back in balance. Okay? They can change the inputs. Obviously, if these are the list of inputs, you can't change your education, but you can change your effort. That's for darn sure. Okay? You can absolutely do that. You can seek to change the outcomes. You can try to get a raise. You can try to get more recognition. And unfortunately, in some situations, people will change the outcomes that they feel they're not getting paid enough by, like stealing staplers. All right, so now I've changed the outcomes. I got more product, okay? But usually what's going to happen, if we feel that we're underpaid and a raise isn't cutting it, generally speaking, people are just going to downplay their efforts, okay? They're just going to stop working so hard. So now they're going to feel back in balance because my effort has dropped and it now matches what I believe that I'm being paid. Okay? So that's the most common way to achieve equity in situations where we feel we're underpaid. But again, we can also start stealing crap. That's not an uncommon response either, okay? If we feel we're overpaid, okay? And I know this is a really common problem, right? Especially for people working at the lower end of the spectrum. Well, no. What's going to happen for people that feel that they are overpaid is they're not going to increase their effort to match the equity, most likely. Instead, they're going to alter their perceptions. Remember, abilities, skills, experience, vision. And they're going, oh, my vision, my ability, my skills are truly spectacular. And even though I don't put a lot of effort into this job, it is these other intangibles that must be flippin' awesome. And so now I'm back in equity, right? Because I've decided my inputs are more valuable. We can also change our comparison other, the one that we compare ourselves to, because often that is a basis for. And so inequity in either direction can lead to job burnout. But obviously it's that underpaid inequity that we normally experience. A related idea to equity theory is the conception of organizational justice, which has been an area of study in and of its own right. It's the study of people's perceptions of fairness in organizational context. And I mean, this word fair has popped up, and I mean, I told you from day one, if your children start screaming no fair, you're going to have an anarchy on your hands. And so if employees feel feelings of unfairness, clearly it has emotional and cognitive responses. And the emotional and cognitive reactions to feelings of unfairness will, in fact, very much influence outcomes, behaviors. The second of the cognitive theories is expectancy theory. And so what happens here is behavior results from conscious choices among alternatives. So the employee makes choices among alternatives, but they evaluate the alternatives based on valence, instrumentality, and expectancy. Valence, according to this theory, is the level of satisfaction that you get if I were to accomplish a goal. If I created an outcome, if an outcome occurred, what level of satisfaction would I feel from it? Instrumentality is the relationship that you perceive between the performance and the likelihood. In other words, if I work hard, will I get employee recognition? So valence is like, how much satisfaction would I receive if I got Employee of the Year? Instrumentality is, what is the likelihood if I work hard that I will get it? Similar but different, expectancy is an individual's belief about the likelihood of achieving a desired performance. And that is to say, instrumentality would be like, if the average worker worked this hard, would they get Employee of the Year? Expectancy is, it would I get if I worked this hard. Expectancy is clearly related to the concept of learned helplessness that we talked about earlier. And remember, learned helplessness was this idea of, doesn't matter how hard I work, I won't make it. And so if an employee has in fact experienced learned helplessness, expectancy will be very low. Okay? And so from the simplest way to understand expectancy theory is that motivation is a combination, almost a multiplicative combination of valence, instrumentality, and expectancy. And multiplicative in the sense that if any one of these three, where do I have it written? Don't I have it written somewhere? Yeah, if any one of these three is zero, motivation is zero. Okay? And so think about it. If I believe Employee of the Year will give me no satisfaction, I have no motivation. If I believe it's impossible, that performance at this level will achieve it, why would I bother? If I have absolute learned helplessness, why would I bother? So if any one of these three is zero, then anything that multiplied by zero is zero, right? Zero times anything. So you throw a zero into this type of a relationship and no motivation will emerge. And so, as we said, the beliefs about these three interact psychologically. They multiply, right? They multiply to create a hedonistic motivation. I love it. What will it do for me? And so organizations can influence motivation by looking at the weakest factor in the chain. If it is in fact a multiplicative relationship and one of these is zero, obviously zero, but even if one of these is low, a 0.1 or something, the entire, I mean, if you multiply three things together and one of them is 0.1, I mean, in the end, you're just going to get close to nothing. So if you look for the lowest point in this chain and manipulate it, you could exponentially explode the whole outcome. Okay, so motivation can be created in this larger way. And here is an examples. Okay, so what am I trying to say? The value, right? No, am I? Hey, wrong one. What am I? I forgot what my three. Oh yeah, valence. Valence is mentality and expectancy. And so valence is in the top boxes. So there's two separate examples. They call it value. Them cheaters. It's valence, right? We just learned it. And so in this educational example, we could have two different ways of two types of valence here. Getting an A on the test will be valued to the extent that it makes one feel like something has been accomplished. Sounds like internal motivation to me. Getting an A on the test will be valued to the extent that it is perceived to lead to other valued outcomes. External motivation. In an organizational example, getting a favorable performance review will be valued to the extent that it makes one feel like they have performed well, internal. And getting a favorable performance view is valued because it gives you something else, external. Okay. So what do we have here? Take those values, put it in here, and take expectancy and instrumentality. Will studying get me an A? Will working 60 hours a week result in? Combine that with instrumentality. Will getting an A lead to other things I want? Will getting a favorable outcome? And so motivation is an interaction of these different factors. And so what we find that the relationship between these factors is more complicated than a simple multiplicative approach. You can't just multiply the three together. And so what we find is that this theory, expectancy theory, it does a better job of actually predicting intentions rather than behaviors. And intentions are important, but ultimately intentions are not what it comes down to for the company. So expectancy theory has its uses, but clearly it doesn't ultimately come down to how much will the company make. So it's got something there. All right, we'll come back and talk about one more category of motivational theories, the regulation models, in a little while. Depends on how long it takes me to come back. See you then.